Several months ago, I thought it'd be fun to take a gander into part of Gemstone that's always been a big question mark to me, the world of Platinum. I knew next to nothing about Plat except that it was supposedly very different, so I rolled up a Plat character and dove in headfirst, figuring that I'd give it about a month and then build an episode based on what I learned. What I learned almost immediately, and what I probably should have known before I even started, is that I was in way over my head. Plat is very different from Prime in some unexpected ways, and a month doesn't do those differences justice. I also came to realize very quickly that it wasn't my story to tell. I was a tourist, and I needed to get some locals if I really wanted to dive into the world of Plat. So, I did. In today's episode, we'll be talking to a panel of Plat players and a Plat GM about what Plat really is, how it differs from Prime, why you should probably give it a shot, and about role-playing at large. So with that, welcome to the 24th episode of Town Square Central. Hello everybody and welcome to Town Square Central. My name is Milax and today we'll be talking all things Plat with a panel of folks from that community of players. Joining us today we have Whick, Vaein, Jaired, Rouste, and GM Naionna. So folks, welcome to the show and thank you for being here today to talk with us about the Plat life. And I would like each of you to start by briefly introducing yourselves, so tell us who you are, how long you've played Gemstone and Plat, and then tell us briefly about the main character that you play in Plat and your role there.
My name is Jason. I've played Gemstone on and off since I was 13 years old, so a little over 20 years now. In Prime, my main character is Neor, and in Plat, I am, of course, Whick. Whick is an interesting fellow. In a nutshell, he is a man who thinks he is in control, but is being controlled by others. And so he struggles against the strings that tie him down. And that is Whick. And that is me. Hi.
I play Vaein. My name's Jason as well. I generally just go by Jason because these days I think I'm found more in Discord than the actual game. But I started playing Gemstone back in like 96, 97. And then I came to Platinum in 2009. And Vaein is an Aelitoy warrior. And basically his entire concept was I wanted to take what everyone, I guess, thought Aelitoy were and really explore their darker side. Because I know if you've read through their history, you know like some pretty horrible things have happened to them. And I felt like that was a really good opportunity to explore that part of my roleplay. And so that's what I started doing.
I play Jaired, and I've been playing Gemstone since the America Online days. I kind of fell out of it for a few years and then came back. And when I did, it was right when the price decrease dropped from $100 a month to $50 a month. And that's when I started. And I do not have a Prime character at all. I only play Plat. And if I was to describe Jaired, I say he is everybody's hype boy, the man bear pig of Gemstone. And he is an agent of chaos, and he doesn't always do what is right. He will usually do what is going to be the most fun.
My name is Rouste. I started Gemstone, I want to say, in 1995. It's long enough now that I don't quite remember. In Prime, I'm best known as Sarmoya or Joskin. And then I started Platinum in 2006 because they were offering an entire free summer of Platinum. So that suckered me in, and I've been there since. Obviously, I've taken some breaks here and there. Rouste is a guy who never intended on being an adventurer, anybody of consequence. He was just a small farmer near the Sea of Fire, and one day his farm was raided, his wife was killed, his farm was burned to the ground, to which he blamed the Tahir for it, and he vowed revenge on the Tahir, but developed a severe case of alcoholism along the way, and found his way to the landing, really just in a terrible state of depression and substance abuse, and just kind of a pathetic existence.
So my name is Bree. I'm GM Naionna. I have a Prime character. I started playing Gemstone back in 2000. Moved over to Plat in 2007, I believe, on a trial. And then decided to go ahead and make that official I've actually been a guru for Plat twice. I took a little bit of a break from staff for about 3 or 4 years, and then came back probably 5 years ago, maybe now. And I've been a guru for Plat for the last 3 or 4 years. I do have a Plat character as well, obviously. I do still play once in a while, but most of my time is spent as a GM.
The thing I want to start with is sort of the most basic question, which is, what is Plat? Because I think that everybody who plays Gemstone is aware that Plat exists, and I think that people have some ideas about what Plat is. I know that I did before I briefly dabbled in it, but I'm curious to know how you all would explain what Plat is and what draws you to it.
Well, for me at least, Platinum is a more I don't want to say quiet instance, but a more personal instance where you can really have some one-on-one attention by both NPCs and other players, and it's really more of a community than a game to me.
Yeah, I was also going to just add that, yeah, it is a much smaller instance, obviously. So, like Whick said, that does allow, like, your characters kind of shine and kind of rise up really early on. Like, you can be brand new to the game, and you can just take the reins and run with it. And Platinum is not beholden to Prime. We have our own history. We have, like, our own characters and things that have happened, and there's a few notable divergences that have happened in the game space.
I would say that Gemstone Platinum is kind of as close as it gets to people sitting down together with a dungeon master and playing, a game of D&D or something like that.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that. With Plat, what I've found, and one of the things that truly makes me really love Plat so much, is that you can be any level, any experience. You could be brand new to this type of gaming. You could be brand new to Plat, and it doesn't matter. We try very hard with our Platinum team to try to make personalized experiences for everyone. We give them lots of opportunities to provide us with their character background, their character quirks, any kind of quirk that they have. We really try to incorporate that, and I don't think that you can really get that in a very largely populated instance. I don't know that it's necessarily possible. So I definitely echo that it's a community, but like Jason said, it is definitely closest to a dungeon master type of tabletop game because you have that kind of community.
Well, and that community is really famously small and tight-knit, and I'm curious to know, what kind of player do you think Plat is built for, and what is it that keeps them there? Do you think everybody is looking for that sort of D&D tabletop, like, co-story building experience, or what?
No, I don't think everyone is. It'd be silly to think that it's something that every single person could enjoy. But it really does have a lot of opportunities for a lot of ways for people to play the game. Now, for people who thrive in crowds, for people who want that, to walk into town's Square Central and see 20 different people spelling each other up, you're just not going to get that here. But other than that crowded ambiance, if you will, if you just want mechanics and you just want to kind of be left alone, Plat has that. If you want a really intense role-playing experience that's personalized, Plat has that. If you just want to kill some monsters casually and once in a while jump in on some story stuff, Plat has that.
Now, there are some people who they play Platinum because they want to be left alone. There's this one character named Sorek. He's been playing for years. I've been playing for years. I've never seen him in game. I've never had any interaction with him whatsoever. But Whick, Jaired, many others, I see them all the time. They know who I am. I know who they are. And just, it's all second nature interacting with them, both in character and out of character. So we're all just kind of really used to each other.
For better and worse, yes.
Like, the type of person I think that Platinum has an opportunity for is definitely, like Whick said, like, if from your silver, go to the auctions and take the item from someone else, you can do that. But the main thing, though, is it does cater every personality type. I know in Prime it's like really easy to get lost if you are a more subdued character. In Platinum, you're really not affected by that negativity. Like, if you show up, if you interact, if you role play, like, there is something for you in this instance. And so I think it's a very unique opportunity.
Yeah, I will say, and I'm again kind of jumping ahead here, but like when I first jumped in, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I hadn't really thought through my roleplay approach and all that. And whatever GM, I mean, it may have been you, Bree, but whatever GM was running the thing in the jungle where things were getting like diseased and we were investigating it.
Oh yeah,
I remember.
Oh, yeah.
I remember.
Yeah.
the black.
It's the goo.
Yeah, the goo. So I was out there, I think it had to be really early in that. It might have even been in like the first foray out there. And I had no idea what was happening, but still felt like people like wanted me to be involved and to be providing input, which is not an experience that I'm used to just because, you know, in a storyline event in Prime, you might have 90 people there, 40 people there, or whatever.
That is another really interesting thing about Platinum. You will find people that are often drawn to being like the center of attention just because they're a well-known, well-fleshed-out personality, but they are so good at pushing that spotlight off to the side to someone that hasn't had that before, and it's really great to see when it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's kind of an attitude of, you know, if somebody comes in and tries us and we want them to have a good time because they might stay and they might make the game better for their presence. So I think, you know, we see a new person, we're like, oh, we get all excited and we're like, yeah, let's try and get them into the fold because they probably have something to contribute.
I want people to have a good experience because I enjoy people and I enjoy what they bring to the community. We've had a lot of new players over the last year, I'd say. Tanai, Jainin, a few others who've really added to my enjoyment because of the role play that they have brought forth and the way that they've interacted with the community. And so when I see that, I want more of that. Whereas when I'm in Prime and I show up at a story event and there's 90 people there, I'm like, oh man, I wish there was less. But in Platinum, I always wish there was more.
From a staff perspective, we like the smaller community because what we do behind the scenes is someone joins Platinum and we're alerted that there's a new account that's joining Platinum. And so Ananasi and I will try to make sure that we go in and start interacting with those characters so that we can try to find something that will stick with them and give them kind of an investment in the Platinum instance and make them want to stay. Because like Whick said, there is a lot of new players that have come in and out over the last year, and several of them have stuck around and contributed tremendously to shaping the world. And one of the things that we focus on as a Platinum staff is making sure that the actions that the players take shape the world as much as possible, and there are actual consequences. So, for instance, there was a character that Vaein maybe remotely reminded of who licked a hair in a random storyline 2 years ago, and it ended up becoming a very big deal. And they eventually got items that were dedicated to that particular event. And we try to do things like that all the time. So I'm hopeful that people who try Plat will give it the chance that I feel like it deserves so that they can try to have one of those moments as well.
Oh, who messed with the hair? I cannot recall.
You shouldn't be licking strange things.
Yeah, did you say licking a hair?
Yes, I did.
Like
there
a
was
rabbit?
Like a single strand of hair that ended up being a clue in a house in Ice Mule several years ago in a random storyline. Jaired should remember because he couldn't get into the house.
I remember it. Yeah, there was no door.
Yes. And they picked it up and licked the hair instead of just handing it over as a clue. And it became this whole thing. And eventually they got an item that was dedicated to licking the hair.
I love that a lot. That's super weird and awesome.
Just to kind of expand on what Bree said there, though, like the actions of the characters mattering. I feel like when I talk to people from Prime, a lot of times they feel like they are relegated into this using of like my care thinks or my care. And like because so much is going on around them and they don't really know how to interact to get in when you have 90 people all vying for attention. Whereas in Plat, like she said, you can take actions. Like you're not left in that thought bubble all by yourself trying to like interact with everyone else.
Well, and I would imagine too that if you know that, I don't know, that Whick is always going to do something like this, right? Or Rouste is always going to do something like that, or Jaired is the man-bear pig of Plat, then you can anticipate, I would imagine, someone else's actions a lot more, and I feel like it would read more like a book, right? Rather than waiting for someone to sort of tell you what happened, you can kind of anticipate it and build around that, which I think would make it more enjoyable.
It's more proactive than reactive. Don't get me wrong. I love Prime. Prime has some great roleplay opportunities. I play in Prime, or I used to all the time, but it was much more reactive. Like the GMs or whoever would have a scene and you would react to what happened. Whereas in Platinum, for example, you can email one of the GMs and say, hey, I want to kill one of your characters. Can you please let me? Or you don't even have to do that in game. They'll respond to you what you're trying to do. And they're pretty good at picking up on it. And so you can drive the storyline rather than just be a slave to the storyline that has already been pre-planned.
Yeah, and
that reminds me of the time Ananasi taunted us because we didn't try to kill one of her characters and she would have let us.
Yeah.
But I actually use my care copiously, and Naionna can attest to that during events because I know that they're getting seen; they're not getting lost in the screen scroll or anything.
Our plan is to not plan. With my storylines, though, because I know the Platinum community so well, they always take it a different direction. And I think in any instance this happens. You plan a storyline, you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. You know you need to get to the end. But in our instance, I pretty much plan for them to change whatever I have in mind. And it always happens. It always happens. And I try to accommodate that as much as possible. So there is a whole lot of on the fly for me. And yes, because I know the characters, I can kind of anticipate what direction they might take it in. But it never fails that someone does something off in left field. And so I really try to just, here's where we start. Here's where I think it might go. But we're always going to have a plan B because that's probably not what's going to happen. And we'll eventually end up in this ending. And I always give myself 3 or 4 options for endings based on what the characters may do.
And one thing that's interesting to me is that I've heard Prime players and GMs talk similarly about the way that they approach roleplay. And so I want to be clear, too, that no one is trying to say that Prime players or GMs can't roleplay well or plan effectively or create good opportunities.
That's not what we're saying.
Yeah. No, I just want to be clear. But what's interesting to me is that the idea that given that you necessarily have a smaller participant pool to draw from because of the smaller player base, there just inherently will be more opportunities for like direct engagement, like equitable direct engagement.
So it's a really fun instance to have a nemesis in. When you know someone who is, the complete opposite of you, and you know each other behind the scenes, and you can just play off of one another, just being cruel and evil or whatever it takes, and you don't have to worry about feelings being hurt or anything like that. You just know how each other are going to act.
You sound super excited for being evil. That's all I gotta say. You're like, oh, cruel and evil. This is
my shout out to Bareth. The nemesis of Vaein. So he's the little goody two-shoes Alatoy to my dark side.
I will say one of the pieces of advice that I got when I was trying to roll up a Plat character was to pick an extreme and to lean into it. To be like the really good guy or the really bad guy, just because it makes it easier to have interactions with other players. And at the time, it struck me as kind of, I don't know, I was like, really? Like, shouldn't I try to be more nuanced? But that does sort of make sense that if you're going to be, like, if you are the dark Alatoy, right? Like, you're going to find a foil that you can play off of.
Definitely.
Yeah, I always like to joke that Whick and Jaired are like the Sean Hobbs of Platinum. And I also like to note that there's not a whole lot of good versus evil in Plat. It's mostly evil versus other evil. We're pretty much all assholes.
That is true.
See, I keep wanting for someone to roll up and play successfully just a white knight character.
Wait. So why do the white knights not stick? Why do the white knights not stick?
Well, because in no
is
offense
it just not
here,
as
but
fun?
All of us, we love to corrupt. We love that storyline of corruption of the innocent. And Bree especially will try to get the good guy to fall.
So this is actually just Bree bringing everybody down.
Maybe a little.
Poor Jadon.
Oh, yeah. My take on that is a little bit different. I do recognize that there's that need for like that kind of hero character, and I've tried to do that with my alt character, but I just haven't played him enough. The reason that I keep coming back to Rouste is because I've just found so much in that character, and he keeps surprising me, and there's all these different things, and he's been this really dynamic character that I didn't expect, and he sometimes gets pulled into being the good guy when he has no interest in being the good guy whatsoever. He just wants to run away, but somehow he gets forced into being the good guy. The Jaden thing, he was definitely like trying to be the guy to make it all better, and sometimes he's just a incredible selfish jerk. But I think that there is a lot of that nuance there that we say, okay, get extremes, but I think, Rouste is actually a really nuanced character. He reacts to different situations differently, and, Jaired's making these claims, but he was also the head of the militia in the landing, and when the chips are down, he's going to be the guy to rally. So I think that we do have the heroes, they just might look a little bit different.
But I'm also hearing that Plat has a vacancy for the, like, lawful good white knight that needs filling.
Definitely.
Bring it on.
Incorruptible. That's what you gotta be, incorruptible.
I wish someone had told me that when I was rolling up my Plat character. That would have given me a lot more direction than my stupid brain was capable of coming up with on its own.
Well, you know what? This is why we have this podcast. Anyone can listen, and anyone's interested, bring your white knight.
You're going to suddenly be overrun with all these pure paladins running around.
That's okay. We can corrupt some.
Yeah, I was going to say, Bree will make short work of them, right?
We have a pretty good track record of 2020.
Okay. Well, I will say my very primitive understanding of Plat as a longtime Prime player was like, it's more expensive. It's probably just better somehow. And I didn't really understand how it was different. And the little that I did know was that Plat players had a lot more cool stuff, it seemed, like in everybody's inventories and lockers.
I mean, per capita.
Per capita,
Absolutely.
sure.
Yeah.
That's a long time saying in Platinum that draws a lot of ire. I'm sorry.
Yeah, per capita.
Oh, I can tell you more about that.
I think Bree and Jaired are the ones to talk to about this.
Okay.
So, we do have a lot of opportunities in Plat that you probably won't see a lot of in Prime, but I think the reason why is because we do have a smaller population. So when we gain approvals, we have to look at per capita. We will not get the same number of releases as Prime will because we have a much smaller population. That is not a very popular thing, but we do I think we do a good job of trying to spread it out. Over the last few years, we've done a lot with trying to allow people, based on their feedback, to have opportunities to gain services, whether they're character defining or role play oriented or actual mechanical services, through things like the loot system, through hunting. They could find certificates in boxes. They can get them as rewards for role playing. We try to secure services that we can offer in events that aren't necessarily offered in Prime. We do quite a bit of that, but it definitely isn't an environment where you just find a really good item laying on the ground and you just pick it up and walk on. You have to work for it, whether it's role-playing or hunting or something of that nature.
It is like a really big misconception that every character in Platinum is, carrying around just the best stuff you could possibly get your hands on, and it's just not the case.
Yeah,
it leads to a lot of disappointment. People come in and
like, wait, where's my 10x Clade? Come on.
Exactly. I'm guilty of this when I'm in the Discord and Prime and I'm saying, hey, Platinum's pretty cool. You can get a lot of nice stuff, and you can. But it takes time still. You have people come and show up, and they don't right away win every raffle. They don't right away get every service, and they get a little jaded.
I would say probably my highest end gear in Prime is better than my highest end gear in Platinum. I think the difference is in Platinum you have more opportunities to get things like private properties, which is just unheard of in Prime, but in Plat they come up every so often. It's just sort of cool. I think you have a better shot at getting unique things in Platinum, which I think isn't necessarily more powerful, but they're cool. Like, I have a private property in Platinum. It doesn't do anything for me mechanically, but I love it.
I think a lot of the misconception about, like, the wealth issue comes from having people that have actually been playing Platinum, for 10 plus years, and of course they have just amassed this treasure trove, and that's just a few people, really.
Yeah.
And so, on the note of differences, in a lot of ways, the Plat community is kind of isolated from the larger Gemstone community. It has its own separate Discord server, separate forums that Prime players can't access, and so on. So why is that? And then how do you think that affects the Plat play experience? And you, Jaired, we're talking about how, the storyline is different things have happened. So how does that sort of isolation affect the way that you experience the game as a player or as a GM?
Don't quote me, but I think the whole Discord issue came out with, we had our own Discord before there was a Gemstone Discord.
Yeah.
But don't quote me on that.
Yep.
That could
That's
be
true.
why. And we have like our own little functions and topics. Like we have a recipe topic.
Oh, I know. I like that one a lot. That's one of my favorites. Yeah.
So, but I use both. I'm in the mechanics channel all the time.
So I think this is actually a really interesting topic. I think a lot of the isolation that Platinum experiences was actually not really our choice. For a very long time, for whatever reason, and still to this day, to some extent, people are not very nice about Platinum even existing. It's not uncommon for people to like really say some mean things to you that you've never even met just because you play in this instance. Shout out to my Shattered brothers and sisters. I know you feel it too. It's something I've personally been involved with a lot, where I've tried to bridge this gap. Like when I go to SimuCon, I make sure I really go around with the Prime players. I introduce myself. I try to talk about Plat all I can. It's met with a lukewarm reception, but by and large, like, we are seen as this place that shouldn't exist, and that's a really sad thing.
That's sometimes in the official Discord, I'll people be ragging on Plat, and I just hit my limit break, and I sort of get mad at people. And sometimes I know that there are some GMs that really want nothing to do with us as well, and we can kind of tell when that happens, and it's just kind of a bummer. I don't know what to do about that. I don't know if there is anything we can do about that. I obviously don't have anything against Prime because I'm in it all the time, but yeah, people are not shy about just ripping on us and saying that we're not playing a game, we're not really playing Gemstone, and I don't know, it sucks.
That's it exactly. It's
stealing resources.
It's everything we get is somehow taking away from what they could possibly have, which is not true. It's not a zero-sum game here. There are limited resources, yes, but
we have two active full-time GMs that are
Yes.
really running the instance.
Yes.
Don't let me leave Allus out here. I know you're around too, buddy.
And that's the thing is I don't like it. I don't like that there's this divide. I don't like that there's this animosity. And it's not like we're like totally innocent over here in Platinum. We make our jokes. We have our little fun. But it really is harmful overall to the overall Gemstone community. What we should be doing is working together, Prime, Plat, Shattered, to have a better experience overall with our communication and with our community. But what we do instead is we take umbrage, we get offended, and we start to cause offense. And I'm guilty of that as well. And I try not to. But, it happens. Like Rouste was saying, you hit your limit break sometimes. But I think Plat players spending more time over in Prime, it comes with our subscription. And Prime players coming in just to say hi, even in our Discord, would go a long way.
Yeah, I would like to see fewer, not barriers, but there aren't many windows into Platinum. So if you're not subscribed, you probably have absolutely no idea what's going on in Platinum. And I would just like the opportunity for people just curious, because we have different storylines, different things happening. And unless you go and ask a Platinum player what's happening, you're not going to know. And I just wish there was more access to what we were doing.
Yeah, we need a version of Newsby that goes back to Prime.
But we can start with this episode, right? This is the first effort there.
So I've spoken to a lot of GMs about this and why they don't like spending time in Platinum. And I feel like a lot of them have these really horror-based stories about things that have happened to them the one or two times that they tried to come to Platinum. And It's unfortunate because I think in those cases, they may be comparing the platinum of 2005 to the platinum of 2020. And so, they came over, they wanted to run their merchant, whatever, and they didn't get the reception that they were expecting. And it's different from Prime. Like, we don't come begging for alterations. If you show up with a merchant, we're going to role play with you. It's not about just get it done, get everybody done as quick as you can. And I think that experience is different to what they are normally doing when they're in Prime, and it just did not sit well with them. And it's something that I wish that, they might want to try revisiting and giving it another try.
Yeah, and there were some real jerks in Platinum, sort of the mid-2000s. They're not around anymore, but the reputation sticks.
Tainted forever.
Yeah, I'd say these last few years have probably been the least toxic Platinum has ever been.
Bree, I'm curious to get your take on that perceived division, too.
I can say, having been a GM back in the 2005 era, and then coming back, it is a very different instance. It is a very different group of personalities. I have definitely been in both instances as far as merchanting and events and storylines, and it is a very different beast. I always try to encourage other staff to come and spend some time and try to set the right expectations, because, Jason is correct. If they come over and set up for a merchant, they're not going to get mobbed with, 25 people all at once. Typically in a merchant session, you can get anywhere from 5 to 10 people, and they want to role play. They want to hang out. You do occasionally have a person who wants to get through and get done, but for the most part, they want to sit down and talk with you and hang out, and there's fun involved. And it may only be 3 or 4 people, and it may only take 45 minutes to get through, because you're just kind of hanging out and having fun. But I enjoy that. It's a very different experience. I have merchants that I run in Prime, and I can tell you it's a mob of a lot of people, and I love that for what it is. But you can't really take the time to just hang out and talk, because you do have a massive amount of people you're trying to get work for. That's not an easy mindset to switch if you've been constantly in Prime and then you come over to Plat. So for me, I try to ask that we get 2 or 3 people who come over from the Prime side as GMs and merchant, rather than a swarm of people like it happens in Prime, because you can have 10 merchants all at once in Prime. There'll be plenty of people to go around. If you bring 2 or 3 at the same time in Plat, you're not going to get a very big crowd. There's just not enough people, and it's also probably specialized services that maybe not everybody wants at the same time.
I would imagine, too, that if you're a Prime GM and you're used to merchanting a certain way, which is trying to get the most work done for the most people as quickly and effectively as you can, moving to a place where people expect you to roleplay might be daunting for the GM, too, right? Like this expectation that, oh, wow, I not only need to do a good job with my work, I also need to give these people this role-playing experience, which might, I mean, I'm sure that GMs are always trying to do that, but I just imagine the stakes might feel a little bit higher, too.
Yeah, and in defense of some of these GMs, we can be difficult in our own ways. Some of us on the Platinum Discord have assembled a list, and I am totally part of this, of the most obscure color names you could possibly find in the English language. It really is, and we will try and push it through. And so we will come armed with like 10 different colors, and they gotta be like, all right, hold on, I gotta check.
Let me Google that.
Just on the other side of the computer screen, they're just like holding their heads, like, why do they have to do this?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. That actually absolutely happens between Jaired, Rouste, and Tanai. Every single time they show up to a merchant, I immediately know I have to get the Google out. I have to get the thesaurus out. I have to get the dictionary out. I've got to start, looking at time frames and when the word came around and is it another language, and it's a little silly.
Yeah.
Well, do you like that better, or do you like someone just DMing you an image and say, make it like this?
Yeah, that's a Whick move. There's also a couple of other people. They will just say, hold on, I'm gonna Discord you a picture.
Hey, I did not know that was an option.
Yeah, that's not an option. Don't take that as a go. Let's not start that trend. I think sometimes, when you look at it from a Prime GM perspective, it is it's a different world. And you're right, there are some bad experiences that are hard to let go of, but there are a lot of GMs who give Platinum their attention, and they either were players at one time themselves, or they've just come over and enjoyed the experience. And so I don't think that, we're a pariah by any means, but it is definitely a different experience, and it's not always right for everyone.
Anyone have anything else they want to talk about on the Plat versus Prime differences that you see that we didn't already talk about?
Yeah, so I have one that's actually just in-game side. Because Platinum has the system of portals and you can go anywhere instantly, I think that's actually a little bit of a detriment from a role-playing standpoint, because nobody really cares where you're from, nobody really cares what town you claim for the most part. So, in Prime, there are people who build their role-playing around where they're from and what town they call home. It doesn't work so much in Platinum, so there's drawbacks to the system as well. I don't want to make it sound like everything in Platinum is better, because it's definitely not.
Can I make a small counterpoint? A slight disagreement with my colleague here.
I'll allow it.
Is that well, thank you. But I think that the portal system and having a more wide open ability to go from town to town is the opposite of a detriment from the role-playing perspective. You can build a relationship with a town, but you can also do that at the same time you are attending events across the Dragonspine. And I guess he's right to an extent, where it doesn't matter as much in the scheme of things, because at least in my experience in Prime, is people got jealous a little bit if you weren't from that town when you came over. Like if you come to Soulhaven to go to an event or something, they'll be like, aren't you a Mist Harbor player, or aren't you a Landing player? With the kind of subtext of, why are you here? Whereas in Plat, you can be from Ice Mule and have a rich history in Ice Mule, and no one will say boo if you show up in the landing to do a landing.
Just don't only stay an Ice Mule and be mad when no one comes to you.
That's
Right.
That's the opposite, yes.
Yes, and it is better to ask in the Discord server, because the ESP changes went through, so it might change, but a lot of folks don't have their amulets on, or didn't have their amulets on. So if you're a new player, there's no one around to spell you up. So you would have to get really good at being self-sufficient.
Yeah.
That's an important point. If you are serious about trying Platinum, I think it's almost necessary, for better or worse, to be a part of the Discord community as well, even if you're just a lurker, because the experience is enhanced so much, because you know that even if no one is around you in game, that there are people playing and active and willing to help, whereas you might not see that in game. Because Rouste is right in this, is that Plat isn't better, it is different. We have our own problems, and one of the issues that we do have is sometimes it can feel empty.
Yeah.
So, I do think you have to have a strong stomach for alone time and self-sufficiency to, really thrive in Platinum. And, an interesting tidbit about, being able to obtain spells pretty much on the fly now from anyone by using the Discord. In the early days when I was playing, there was a specific player that basically built an empire out of embedding amulets with the basic spells, 401, 406, 414. And I would find myself in her shop, every day, making sure I had the necessary spells just so I could go hunt, because I just didn't see anyone else.
Right. I think the strongest preconceived notion that I had about Plat heading into it was that everybody was really hardcore about role-playing. And I think that what struck me when I did have my brief foray into Plat was that everyone did seem to take it really seriously. And when I first went into the Discord and I was asking how to get started, people suggested that I go write my character's backstory and then post it in the forums that other people could read it and understand how to interact with my character. And I was shocked. I was like, really? Yeah, a lot of people do that. And everyone that I encountered seemed to have a well-defined backstory that was informing how they act and what they say, even with little things like a spell up. I remember Avrian, I asked for wizard spells and he said, meet me in Mist Harbor, and I did. And in this short 20-minute interaction, I learned all about how his character had a stutter, but not when he was casting magic because of this event in his past and this special book that was really important to the character. And it was like being in a story for that thing, which in Prime, that would have been a 40-second transactional experience that, I probably would have paid the other person for or whatever. And that was my first sort of introduction to how seriously I think people took role-playing, because it was just happening during a random interaction like that. So, yeah, I just want to talk about role-playing in Plat, because my take, and I had other interactions that were similar to that, even in the brief time that I was playing, so I want you all to talk about role-playing in Plat. So would you agree that you think that that's sort of a more central element to most players' experiences with Gemstone than in Prime?
I think it can be, but it does not have to be. There are plenty of people who don't roleplay, who just want, hey, man, I don't want to roleplay today. Can you just spell me up? And that's fine. We don't judge them. We don't say, oh, you're a worse of a person because you don't want to roleplay. No, that's if that's what you want, you can have that in Plat.
I cry.
Now, the differences between role-playing in Plat and Prime, it's much harder to be an observer in Plat, just because that there aren't going to be 20, 30, 50 people at an event. There's going to be 10, 5. And we want you to step up. We want you to take the lead. And so we're going to give you the opportunity to do so. So if you don't like that, if you just like to sit and watch the movie go by, it's going to be a lot harder for you, I think. That said, no one wants perfect role playing. None of us are perfect at it. None of us are actually, often very good sometimes, but we do try.
I think there is a higher minimum, maybe. I don't think you're ever going to meet anybody in Platinum that literally talks about numbers or something that is blatantly out of character. Everybody is at least going to be in the role-playing environment. Mm-hmm. Everybody is not trying to write Shakespeare. There are all kinds of levels of roleplay involved, just like you're going to find in Prime. And I'm really big on this, that I really don't think there is any difference in the high-end roleplay of Platinum with the high-end roleplay of Prime, or the medium or the bottom. I mean, it's just role-playing, and you're going to have good things and bad in each instance.
And I want to touch on sort of the people starting and backstories thing. I don't want anybody considering Platinum to think that they need to come with a 20-page backstory and, I'm new to the lending, let me tell you a tale. Absolutely not necessary. With Rouste, I never wrote down his backstory. I just played it. What I tell new people is just have an idea. Have an idea, give yourself a rough outline, and then get in there and let the character come to you. Because you'll interact with people, and then you can react, and then you can learn from there. So there are people that they want to have this really intricate backstory when they start. That's great. And there are people who don't, and that's great too. Come as you are.
Yeah, I will say it did feel a little intimidating as an outsider, looking in, but I think maybe unnecessarily so.
Yeah, and I think that's a little bit of a stigma we have to fight, and that's why I'm saying I really don't feel like you have to perform, don't feel like you have to quote unquote be at our level. Just come in and have some fun.
Don't be scared. We don't bite.
Yeah, and
that's not true.
I was about to say that's absolutely not true.
I mean, like Rouste said, though, there is, if you come with just a basic idea, there is so much potential and just spontaneous action happening in the world that there is so much potential for character growth. Like Bree mentioned earlier, the licking the hair thing that ended up becoming an item that my character has that's everyone knows about it now. That was really spur of the moment. I had no intentions or plans for that to happen, but it became a major part of the character. I think if you're looking for opportunities like that, they are definitely in Platinum.
And the GMs can also jump in, get help with that. One time I was getting an item made, and actually it was Naionna that was making it, and I just asked her for a little bit of help, and she sort of looked at my guy and suggested something, and that actually became part of his backstory, and that it wasn't even me that thought of it.
In role-playing in general, and I have a lot of strong opinions about this, so I'll try to keep it brief, but role-playing in general, the more flexible your character can be, better it is when playing in a game like Gemstone, because you can grow, you can adjust to the environment. And I think one of the frustrations that happens is when people come into Platinum and they have an intricate backstory prepared and events don't quite make that as smooth as they would like, it frustrates them. And so better to just, like Rouste said, come have an idea. And it doesn't have to be a good idea. Heck, most of my ideas start really bad. My character is named Whick because I had just finished watching John Wick. And I was like, I'm going to be Keanu Reeves.
If you wanted to try Plat and you truly had no idea what you wanted to play when you came, I'm certain if you show up in the Discord, you give it a few hours, you will have an idea of something you'd like to try.
No, what you do is you just pick your favorite Keanu Reeves movie and you name your character after that, and then you just show up and start going.
I will say one more thing. Please don't come into us and ask us what we need. What we need is for you to find something that works for you and is fun.
But what you need is a white knight.
Yep, a white knight. Yeah. Keep in mind, a throwaway line can haunt you for life. Perfect. Don't rub Crodatum, you blot.
You blot!
One time, just sitting at a table, like practically AFK, my character just sitting there, whatever, and then a servant girl came by and spilled all over his pants. And so she was trying to, wipe it off, and my character immediately accosts her saying, whoa, you don't rub Crodatum, you blot. Tavern owner comes in, fires the poor girl. And now the entire waitstaff of Alanthea is mad at my character and have been throwing handbags at his head from the shadows ever since.
That's amazing. I really love that.
No matter what town he goes to, no matter what the event is, some person stops by, recognizes him, and smacks him in the head with a handbag.
That's amazing.
It could be a real serious moment sometimes, too. Like, oh, there's the big bad lich. Everyone's in trouble. Handbag. Stunned. 12 rounds.
And I think that showcases a great thing about Platinum is your character becomes a part of the community. Now, don't be intimidated because we have a lot of in-jokes and things like that. And I know that for me, when I first came to Plat, that intimidated me. Like, wow, these people, they all know each other. They're all so tight-knit. They're all so, how am I ever going to break into that? But we really do want you to be a part of our family.
Whick earlier mentioned being an observer won't go over well. And it's mostly because you're not going to be allowed to just be an observer. Someone's going to try to get you involved.
Yep.
Why is that person in the corner just staring still?
Yep.
Hey, what's going on?
Yeah, are you okay?
Here, hold this.
Yeah. Other than sort of GM run events, it sounds like there are also sort of spontaneous opportunities for role playing where, an NPC may walk by because the GM sees you sitting at a table and just interact. But what other kinds of role playing opportunities are there in Plat, and what are those like?
I don't think GMs need to be involved in some of them. I know me, Bareth, who was mentioned earlier, Jainen, Tanai, Jaired, Rouste, a lot of us will play with each other and build stories without the GM's involvement at all. And the community itself will take that seriously. Like, for example, Jainen, one of the things I did early on is I pretended that I was a master of the Council of Light, and so I used my resources to possess Tanai's character with a spirit that would take her over sometimes. And the GMs rolled with that. The players rolled with that. It became a quest to get her unpossessed before she could start doing more damage, and it turned into a big thing that really helped her character along and get her introduced. And the GMs didn't really have anything to do with how that started. And so I think Platinum is a great place for player run storylines and player pushed narratives like that. And so that's an opportunity.
And Bree, how do you, as a Plat guru, how do you pick up on those player-run initiatives and try to work with them?
There's a couple of ways. I offer the players a lot of opportunities. We have a pretty strong community who writes vignettes about things that they've done that took place outside of the eyes of anyone except for just a couple of players. They'll put it up on the forums. I read those regularly. Try to incorporate those into anything that we have the opportunity to. I get players who, Discord message me or send me emails and let me know something's going on. They'd be happy to have some support. There are lots of players who run events. They will set up hunting events. They will set up their own role-playing events. We try to get those calendared for them and support them as much as possible. If we're around, we'll pop in and, try to observe what's going on, maybe provide some mood messaging or, incorporate some of it. So it just depends. We've had some pretty major storylines that have occurred based on player run or initiated activities that we just kind of decided to go with. We had a major storyline last year that came about because of an avalanche that Jaired and Janan got together and decided to make, and they put a little vignette up on the boards, and I saw it and ran with it. It probably didn't go the way they wanted to, and they've let me know more than once. But that's the thing. You put it up on the forums, and you run the risk of a GM like myself who might see it and say, aha, and
it all worked out.
Before you know it, it's a major storyline. It just kind of depends, but we try to be very flexible. We're around as much as we can be. We try to observe and interact and, of course, pick up on the cues that they leave us, and we just see where it goes.
I think in Platinum, you're a lot more likely to get trolled by GMs than you are in Prime.
Oh, absolutely. It's great.
Yeah, I'm getting that vibe from this panel.
It's what could possibly go wrong is like the question you should never ask when you're trying to do something.
So again, there are many opportunities to just role play with your fellow player. I mean, for myself, if I'm just asking someone to go hunting, I'm probably going to be role playing as we kill stuff. Yeah, it's going to go a little slower than you're probably used to, but it's going to be an immersive experience, or at least I'm going to do my best to make it that way. And that goes all the way up the ladder. You can get people that want to have really intense debates and, issues, fights, problems with you. There is the opportunity for that if you want to explore that really intense, passionate side of roleplay. Again, Bareth is excellent at this, and he assists Vaein all the time in setting up these situations where they can just go at one another philosophically, morally, and bearing their soul to one another, and it's a very cool experience.
And on the same vein, we also have jailbreaks and buildings set on fire and kidnapping and all kinds of crazy things that just come out of spur of the moment activities that the players do. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for it to go either way.
Yeah, and it can get really intense because of the close-knit nature of things. Last year during Ebengate, I was in real life emotionally exhausted by the time the role-playing story was over. I had to not play for a few days because I was just tired because it was extremely emotional. I found it affecting me in real life. The Butcher was abducting player characters, and other player characters were assisting the Butcher and participating in some macabre things and cheering on. And sort of a cult of Gezeresh sort of appeared that the players basically started on their own, and they were trying to basically force children and other people to eat the egg and become denizens of Gezeresh, and the GMs were inundating me with ghosts begging me to help them find eternal rest, and I found myself basically doing a lot of stuff alone, and I had to confront a former friend because he had turned to the dark side more or less, and it was and none of it I wasn't intending on any of it. I just wanted to see what was going on. I ended up digging graves and running into the moot hall at 3 a.m. because the head of the militia had turned evil, and I mean, it really put me through the ringer.
It was fun.
It was fun, but it was also really
it's intense. Yeah, it's like I said, being an observer, it's going to be hard to do. We're going to get you involved.
As a role-playing noob, it's hard for me to understand how to separate my experience as a player from the experience that the character is having. So I would imagine that for me, it would be tough to go at it with someone and then later be like, hey, that was really fun, and so I'm curious to know, not that I would be actually upset. It's just not a thing that I have a lot of practice with. So I'm curious to know how, what's that like?
I think
That's one of the reasons I suggest going into the Discord community, because it's much easier to do that when you already have a relationship with someone, when you already know who they are, you know they're welcoming, you know they want you around, and they can DM you and say, "Hey, man, this is just for fun. It's for kicks. If you're really upset, let me know and I'll stop." But you know, and I think we respect each other like that.
That to trust is really important, and the Plat community has that.
Definitely. And, if you're not in the Discord, if you're making your way around the world, copious use of Whisper OOC in a situation like that can always help.
I know that I have learned a lot about role-playing, even in my brief stint in Plat, as a Plat noob, that I've carried over with me to Prime a little bit. I'm curious to know how each of you approaches role-playing and how you build out a character, how you figure out how they're going to act, and how you try to bring it to life in the game. So I want to know how you all approach that part of Gemstone.
So for me, I start with motivation. My character wants this to happen eventually. My character has a goal. My character has a desire. For Whick, he wants control. He wants order. He wants peace through force, if you will. He believes that there's a place for every person and every person should be in their place. And so all his actions and all his interactions are seen through that lens. And so when I start making a character, I decide their basic motivation. What do I want? From there, that helps me to inform my actions. What do I want? So I can act in a way that my character thinks he'll get what he wants. It takes practice, but if you start small and little things, if you start like with a small little right in the moment, like what does my character want from this interaction specifically, and then you can build up on that as you go.
For me, when I can talk about Vaein, I guess, because he's probably one of my most fleshed out characters I've ever made. With him, I started with an idea that I had seen in other people, like how people looked at the Aleutoi as a race, and they were kind of seen as this joke, like, haha, the little winged bug people. And I really, like I said, as I read the lore for them, I started picking up on tidbits out of that I really thought were going in the complete opposite direction of the perceived notion of that race. And so, I think I definitely base my ideas when I start out on taking something that's already got a foundation and kind of going in another direction from it, which led me to creating, this very dark, sullen, moody, I guess, character that is still very much part of the documented lore of that race. So I enjoy filling out something that's already there.
So for me, characters come from two places, either something that I find interesting or something that I find is missing, like the would-be White Knight character that I've been sort of dragging along for a while. It was like, there's not really anybody in Platinum who's like a real, honest-to-goodness hero who wants to do good and set things right. And then there's also what I find interesting, and that's where Rouste came from. I wanted to do something that I hadn't done before. I hadn't ever played a ranger before because my father played Gemstone and was a ranger, and so I obviously couldn't be a ranger. So I had this ranger, and I never done range before. So I was like, okay, well, what would a ranger doing range? Why would he be adventuring? And I kind of came up with the idea of somebody who had a great loss. So I was like, okay, well, who's responsible for that loss? And then I came on to the Titair. And then it's like, well, okay, well, they're here, so that means my character needs to be from here. And so I just kind of came up with one thing from there, and then I just ask a question. It's like, okay, well, why this? What causes this? And then I get that answer, and then I come to the next thing. It's like, okay, well, why this, or what happens as a result of that? But for me, it's really, really important to not put my characters in this box, because I might have an idea of what they are, but they end up being something else completely. And so I want my characters to surprise me. It's almost like writing a story that, I have an idea, but my characters I consider a living thing, and they're guiding me more than I'm guiding them.
That's a great answer, man.
Thank you.
I mean, those are all good answers, and I think, to approach it conceptually, like I want to explore this concept and build a character that will help me do that, or I want to start with the motivation, or I mean, those are all interesting ways to think about role playing that are just completely honestly like much deeper than the way that I normally approach it, and I think would make it a lot more fun to play instead of just. I mean, I'm a min-maxer at heart, like I just am, and it hasn't been a motivation of mine to try to build that in, but I think it would make in Prime or Plat my experience richer and more fun to try to do more of that.
I think some people, maybe you feel this too, you can tell me, but do you see roleplay as like something that's a little more of a burden, that's harder for you to do, that just can't find time for that? I'd like the numbers.
No, I think, yes, I think I see roleplay as incidental because I'm a very competitive person by nature and I'm drawn to games where I can compete. And I think for me, a lot of the joy in Gemstone has been discovery, like what happens when you get this new spell, or what is it like to do that? And you don't need to roleplay to, or I haven't needed to roleplay to do that, but I think that skipping out on that has meant missing a lot of opportunities for enrichment, even if things maybe progress a little more slowly.
And that's the thing about Gemstone is you don't have to roleplay.
Right.
You can get a complete mechanical experience that's fun and interesting, and I like it too. I enjoy the mechanical aspects of Gemstone, but I do also like the ability to tell a story because I'm a storyteller at heart, and Gemstone is a platform where I can tell a story with my friends that has that mechanical basis, that it isn't just us making stuff up. It's us making stuff up within a set of guidelines. And you talk about being competitive, and I think you can make role play almost into a competitive experience. I wouldn't recommend doing that. It creates a lot of issues. But it is something where you can decide, I want to be the very best at playing this role that I can be. And even though I'm a nobody from Platinum who no one's even ever heard of before, I can go on to lead a demon invasion of a town. I can go on to owning Mist Harbor for a certain amount of time, and you can approach it from that perspective too if you'd like. But again, I don't recommend it. It creates a lot of problems, but it's possible.
I would just say, even if, like you said, you're a min-maxer, numbers are your thing. That's totally cool. I like numbers too. But I think if you even just started small, this is what I would tell people that don't like role-play. If you just add something minor in there to your regular routine, maybe it's just saying one line in character related to the situation going on at the time. I think you actually understand over time that you get more enjoyment from the amalgamation of the two, because it's like this seamless flow of you're doing your min-max thing and you're role-playing at the same time, and you don't see them as separated.
I do think that was my mistake in trying out Plat briefly, was just trying to dive in head first and trying to be great at this thing that I was not great at. And as a result, I wasn't immediately great at it and felt like, well, okay, I don't know how to do it then. So I think that's actually a really helpful tip to just, to build slowly, right? I mean, it's like developing any skill. You can't become expert immediately.
Yeah, I used to always have a little pie chart where I would say there's people who are playing a character, there's people who are playing a game, and there are people who let the game play the game for them. And everyone can take those in different ratios. And when I say people let a game play for them, it's those people that are heavy into the automation with Lich. And that's a whole game too. But that's not really what we're talking about, but whatever. And also, you got to think about, as you're developing this character that you started, and you get onto year 5, year 10, year 15, primarily playing the same character, they kind of take on a life of their own. And all I'm going to say about is never underestimate the power of the retcon.
So I guess I'm the oddball out, because I don't start out with any of that stuff. When I start creating NPCs, and I've had some that have lasted a long time, I never intend for them to be long-term. I always look at them as disposable. And I always try to come up with, what's the conflict? Where are they from? Why are they here? How did they get here? And what do they want? And then after that, I really just let things just kind of develop. My most long-standing character right now was never meant to make it past a couple of months. And then it was going to be done. But by the time the storyline was over, she ended up becoming a major character that's been around for years. and I really have no idea when that's going to end. But I don't tend to start out with any kind of real goal in mind. I just look at whatever the conflict is that brought them there, and then I determine that they're going to stay around or they're going to die off just based on whatever happens in the world around them.
So I have a question about that. That's really cool. But do you formulate multiple characters at the same time, since you're kind of like stuck in that having to make disposables for this situation and this situation?
I do. So it's probably a little known fact, or maybe it's not, and I'm just fooling myself. I play multiple characters at the same time for events, generally. I will normally have 3 to 4, sometimes 5 characters going all at the same time. And I really just kind of come up with different personalities and what role they're going to fill. And then based on however the players interact with them and what kind of events they get pulled into, that determines where they're going and how long they're going to stick around. And I've had very minor characters who were supposed to only be around for 1 or 2 scenes suddenly be around for months. And then I've had others that I expected to be around for much longer end up being killed off because of player decisions. So it's really kind of up in the air.
It is interesting to hear, even just in a space where it feels like people have a pretty shared understanding of what they're doing and what they're trying to get out of an experience, how different the approaches are. I mean, I think it's pretty interesting to me to hear that.
Yeah. It's really good to be open to things, because the NPC that she was referring to, she'll say, "Come with me," and then 5 minutes later you find yourself in a barrel floating down the river toward Darkstone Bay, and you're like, "Oh, okay, this is cool."
I think the one common thread that I heard in all of that is flexibility in some form, right? That you cannot approach role-playing as this rigid, like, I will do this is my story, and I'm not bending, because it won't work. Like, there has to be some level of give and take and improvisation.
I mean,
there are people who try that, and they often get really frustrated.
Yes.
Yeah, you should definitely take the Bruce Lee approach and be like water.
You gotta go with the river, go with the flow, be the river. But Bree Naionna was right. Trust is the big thing. It's because we've built a community, and being able to trust someone else to put your character's fate in their hands and say, okay, Rouste, what are you going to do with Whick now? You have him at your mercy. Be willing to lose. Be willing to have your character lose.
I think that's a really good point. You do have to be willing to lose, but there are lots of times that you should also expect to win. There are times that, we have a lot of evil personas in Plat, and some anti-heroes as well, but we always try to provide them with at least brief victory, even if we know that long-term that may not be something that we can contain and sustain for them. We will try to give them brief victory. We also try to sprinkle in some lightheartedness. We do have a lot of very dark storylines, and unfortunately that's probably part of me, because I tend to go towards the deep and dark. But we do have lots of fun things, like jumping into the barrel and going down towards Darkstone Bay and getting on a ship and doing all kinds of fun things. We've had people turn into sprites before, and we've had people who got trapped in the belly of a kraken, and there's been all kinds of things that we've tried to do to lighten the mood. But flexibility is incredibly important.
I have to point out that all of those fun, light things happened early on in that character's life. It's been getting more and more dire as things go on.
It does, because she has turned a very dark...
Yeah.
I blame it on Jaired.
She's had a lot of terrible things happen to her.
She laid down with the devil, and now...
Blaming it on Jaired is the wise thing to do.
And I will say that trust really goes both ways. A few weeks ago, actually, Ananasi DM'd me. She's like, "Hey, is everything okay? Because Rouste is being really harsh, more so than normal." And I was like, "Oh, it's fine. He just doesn't like gnomes." And she's like, "Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure you're okay."
Do you all have other things about Plat that you want to talk about?
There are some certain Plat perks that we get.
Yeah, let's talk about Plat perks. So what are some of the perks of being a Plat subscriber?
75% off in the high-end script shop.
Yep. Quarter prices. We also get to
100K
test.
for rock players.
Yeah, we also get to test a lot of things. So, like, right now, I've really been going at the open sea adventures.
Ooh, it's fun.
Retzer's
real
baby.
Fun. So, yep,
And
we've
it's
been
great.
doing a lot of debugging, a lot of good times, but that's one of our perks is we usually get the kind of a sneak peek at a lot of systems
The early
first.
access.
Yeah,
like
early
Yeah.
access kind of, but we do a lot of debugging though. It's
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the flip side to early access,
Yeah.
right? Like you've got to
yeah,
fix it.
I mean, and that can be fun, but I can understand some folks that might not be fun to
Yeah.
walk into
Yeah,
something.
last year we found a bug at Duskruin that, had it been implemented in Prime, would have just brought the game to its
Yup.
knees.
Yup.
Gained
Good
8
times.
million experience in 20 minutes.
Oh, the long-term experience absorption boosts.
So the discounted Hess is definitely nice. Early access is nice. What other perks do Plat players enjoy?
If you want a shop, you just walk in and get a shop.
Yep.
If you
Easier
like
access to
participating in the auctions for silvers when they come around, you are guaranteed an item pretty much. There are never enough people. There are always more items. I'm not saying you're going to get the best one, but you can walk away with an item.
Role-playing rewards that I don't see in Prime.
You're talking about like RPAs.
No,
No,
I'm
I'm
talking
talking about
TD,
I'm talking about actual, like you
enchant.
And Bree kind of
shares
mentioned that
or-
too, right? Like you might
Yeah.
even find like a certificate or something, like some unlocking thing.
I can expand on that a little bit. A couple of years ago, we had a Platinum OOC meeting, and players talked about really wanting to see rewards such as mechanical services and even roleplay oriented services that were available for people who were role-playing and participating in certain events. We have a thing called Liana's Adventures, which is the NPC I mentioned earlier that has lasted several years. She randomly takes players out onto adventures. They're never calendared. They're always just announced in game and traveled word by mouth. And then if you participate in those, occasionally at the end, you will get rewarded with a service. It could be an enchant or TD, or maybe it could be, a custom swear or something of that nature, depending on what we've gotten approved for the year. And then we also have a couple of reoccurring monthly events, one that's run by GM Naionna and then one that's ran by me. They're all roleplay oriented, and we have participation cards. If you participate in enough of those, at the end of the year, we have a shop that you can go inside and pick one thing, and it's redeemed for you. And they can be mechanical services or roleplay-oriented services. There is a finite amount, and you do have to participate, but we have that shop, and that's something that's particular to Platinum.
And the Liana's adventures are super fun. I think
Always.
last night we had to climb into a mammoth to get its heart out, and then we had to figure out a way to put ourselves inside a chest to steal a magic hairbrush. It's fun. It's just fun to go to.
And I'll say one more perk. We have two of the best GMs around in Ananazi and Naionna. We have Aulus as well, and they are completely devoted to the instance, and you can tell, and that's just something to really appreciate.
We get a few more Simi coins in a month, but a big one is that we don't usually have to fight over slots for things, like especially at the high-end script shop or maybe some of the stores where they have a certain number of certificates and you have to be at the right place in the right time. That's a lot rarer in Platinum. Normally, if you want something and you can afford it, you can get it.
And there's a lot of instance of collusion where we'll help each other get the things that we want.
I think JD and I were negotiating on who got the dwarf empath tattoo and who got the ore and just the various things, trying to wheel and deal.
I got me some.
Yeah, I can attest that happens on a regular basis. We see that all the time. I experienced it as a player when I first came to Plat. I think there was an auction at Ebongate, and I ended up walking away with a crossbow that I really wanted, and I think we ended up paying just a couple of hundred silvers for it, and it was just people being generous, and that's the general community feeling. So you have to work real hard to not be treated that way by the community just right off the bat. It happens all the time. It's a really nice thing.
That sounds nice. So I would like to know what your hope for anybody who is a Prime player who is listening to this, like what do you want them to take away about Plat? Like what is your hope that really sticks with them?
So I would personally hope that they realize that we are all playing the same game ultimately. It's a very, very small community in the grand scheme of things. and I think we should definitely be interacting more. So come give Platinum a try. We'll work with you. It will be fun, and let's stop the animosity at one another.
We're human beings.
I hope that people listening realize we're a welcoming community. We may seem isolated, but we got our open arms for you. Just come on, let us embrace you and help you have a fun experience. And you don't have to leave Prime. You can do both. You don't have to abandon all your gear in Prime. You can come play with us when you want and play in Prime when you don't.
If you have questions, ask. You can ask me personally. I'm very easy to find. If you say, hey, I've heard about this thing, you can ask. I'll be like, yeah, that's true, or that used to be true, or no, that's not true. Who said that? We need to kneecap them.
While we talk about friendly,
Yeah.
Yeah.
what I'd really like to see people do is A, give it a try. B, understand that the isolation is truly not it's not because Platinum thinks that they're better than Prime or Platinum doesn't want to interact with Prime. It's truly just because it's a different instance and it's a subscription gate. That's all it is. We've run trials in the past where we've had people come and embrace, and some of them have stayed and some of them have determined it's not for them, and that's perfectly fine. But we would definitely welcome people who are new and want to try us out. I think that there's a lot, like they've said before, earlier in this podcast, that there is a lot of opportunities for any type of player. We're not that different, honestly. We just play in a different instance and are focused maybe on a few different things. But overall, it's the same game.
Man, it sounds really sad. We're like pleading for people to...
I think the point is well taken, though, that, right, there's this rift, perceived or real or fake or whatever, and, you know, you guys want to share the good thing that you've got with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's
if
a
you
game.
don't
Let's have
want to
some
play, it's okay. You don't have to like it. But
No, you have to
you know,
like it.
it's okay to try it. Like, we won't be mad if you don't like it. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
think
just
less-
give it
We
a
will
shot.
understand.
Mm.
Just give our stuff back before you go.
The other thing that I wanted to ask everybody is what your hope is for Plat within the next year. Like, what would you be really happy if, like, in a year we sat down again to do, you know, what is Plat 2.0, and you all saw this happen? Like, what would you feel really good about?
Open Sea Adventures, the game.
I think that's just called Sea of Thieves, but yeah.
The ability to battle ships. I want a battleship so
Yes.
bad.
I do. I
Yes.
want to fight a breeze ship. I want to sink the
Yeah.
nuke. I want to shoot halflings at it through cannons.
Yeah, we need to sink Whick's ship for sure. We
Never.
need to make that a
I want
happening thing.
You'll never take
want-
me alive.
I want Jaired catapulted onto Whick's ship, miss, and then have to fight a shark.
I mean, if we're just going with wish lists, I
Yes.
hope in a year that we are going to Brenair as a new high-level hunting area.
Oh, that would be fun.
I think, on a serious note, if in a year we came back and we had about 5, maybe 10 solid new role players in the community, and if we had some new GMs who came in and wanted to run some stories, even if it's just small stuff, and so they take a weekend, take a week to just do a small little role play story, then I would be content. I would be satisfied.
So there's two things I've been kind of asking for years. One is capped Krolven. The other is the ability to elect players like they do in Prime. But the other thing I'd really love to see in Platinum is some event or some storyline that permanently changes the actual world in some way. Like, you would come to the landing and it is actually different in some way than the landing version. The Prime version of the landing.
The Plat landing is definitely different from the Prime landing. I can tell you, as a Prime player, I came in and felt disoriented. It is not the
There
same.
But I think that's more because there's been more divergence in Prime than from the split. But just something really, really major, be like, hey, this is really different from Prime.
Okay, I
Like,
see what you're
say
saying.
if a meteor fell down and crushed the shanty town, or say that Ice Mule was taken over by some dark elven warlord who wanted to rule with an iron fist or something. You know what I mean? Just something like that. That'd be awesome.
Oh, and just real quick, Open Sea Adventures has your capped Krolven.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
they
can,
do.
Krolven are one of the ship types, and you can board their ship and kill capped Krolven all day long.
I think Retzer
excited.
said it's Krolven, Undead, and...
Pirates.
Yar.
Well,
Aren't,
okay.
aren't
they're all,
Krolven
they're all,
pirates?
They're all pirates. Yeah, it's undead, Krolven, and then it's mixed races. Where it can be like halflings, elves, humans.
Okay.
They're the basic.
Just
bases.
non-Krolven, non-undead.
Right.
The boring ones.
Yeah, right. Who wants to fight them? Those are just bandits on a boat.
But yeah, they all count as pirates towards the task.
Yeah. Okay, and Bree, how about you? What's your hope for the next year?
I'd really like to see, very similar to what Whick said, another, good 5 to 10 people who have decided to stay. I'm always looking to try to expand our player base. I'd also really like to see the ability for us to have more player-run stories and player-run roles.
Yay.
I really like the thought of having players run or hold roles within the town themselves, like Jaired was a barkeep for a little while at the end, and there are players that play farmers, there are players that want to be in politics, there are players that want to do a variety of things, and I'd really like to see that incorporated.
Jaired would really like to still be a barkeep.
That was a very short-lived dream. He should have known better.
Yeah, but still, it was fun.
We're gonna have barkeeps as a new profession in Gemstone. Confirmed.
Artisan professions. There we go.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much for joining us today on Town Square Central to share a little bit about, or to shed a little light on the world of Plat with everybody. I know that I learned a lot, and I'm hopeful that some folks will pop over to Plat and give it a try. But thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you.
Hey,
Yeah.
thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Thank you.
Yay.
Hi, this is Virstana. I knew Matt, aka GM Scorn, for years, practically his entire career, both as a player and as a GM, and he was one of my best friends. I was almost invariably talking to him. He was super supportive of all of my the little projects that I had going on in and around Gemstone, from my economics research to my archiving of merchant and special events. And he was super supportive. Every time I mentioned I wish there was more of X, he was always going, I'm doing such and such a project, and I'll see if I can't get some of X put into it. Or, I was building a dream shop that I wanted to see in game, and he'd say, well, when you finish it, send it my way, and I'll see if I can put it in. And well, the shop itself didn't get put in. Another GM took the inventory and made it come true, and the event that it showed up at was the last big event that Matt oversaw, and I'm so glad that he was able to see it happen. And I'm really gonna miss him. I still miss him. Every once in a while something will happen, or a thought will pass through my head, and he'll just start crying again, because the friend I used to talk to isn't there to talk to anymore. And it's just, he was a good guy.
He helped me feel welcome. He helped me feel wanted, and he did his best to make me feel included. And that's how he was with people, is he wanted people to feel welcome and included and wanted. And I just want to say that I miss him.
Outside of Gemstone, he was just an incredibly kind human being. I live in Houston, he lived near Houston, and we would chat just kind of about Houston things. And I think he really enjoyed that, because Gemstone in a lot of ways was his outlet to the greater world, and he treated everybody with kindness and dignity and respect, and I think everybody who came across him felt that.
I've known Matt, GM Scorn, for many, many years. We had a really good relationship. We've worked together for many years, but I've also known him outside of the game for quite some time. He was very, very important, not only just to Platinum, but also to the game host community. He was just an amazingly fun, lighthearted person, despite, some personal things that he was dealing with. And he just brought a lot of life to all of the players that he interacted with, the things that he did. He just truly enjoyed what he was doing and was always very concerned about making other people happy. He will definitely be missed, and he left his mark, and I think it was a very positive one. We were definitely better for him.
It's so good to learn that right outside your window there's only friendly fields and open roads, and you'll sleep better when you think you've stepped back from the brink and found some peace inside yourself. Lay down your heavy load. It gets all right to dream at night. Believe in solid skies and slate blue earth below. But when you see him, you'll know. It's okay to find the face to saunter forward, with no fear of shadows spreading where you stand. You'll breathe easier just knowing that the worst is all behind you, and the waves that toss the raft all night have set you on dry land. It gets okay to praise the day. Believe in sheltering skies and stable earth beneath, but hear his breath come through his teeth. Tell no one what you've seen. It's so good to learn that from right here the view goes on forever, and you'll never want for comfort, and you'll never be alone. See the sunset turning red, let all be quiet in your head. About all the stars are coming out. They shine like steel swords. Wish me well where I go. But when you see me, you'll know.